Hi, and welcome to OverHERD at Career Education. OverHERD at Career Education is a new twice-monthly outreach from the Office of Career Education. I've got a really cool guest with me here today, Mr. Matt James from Student Affairs. Do you want to introduce yourself, Matt?
Hey, Denny. Thank you so much for having me. Like Denny said, my name is Matt James, and I absolutely love what I get to do here at Marshall University. I am one of our assistant deans of students in the Division of Student Affairs. So, it's always been kind of my dream, Denny, to be on a podcast. So it's an honor for you to be the first podcast that I'm taking part in. Denny asked me to think of a topic that we could talk about today that would be of relevance to students. And it was really easy for me to come up with that topic, Denny, because there's one topic that continues to come up in my conversations and daily interactions with students, and that is the topic of mental health, especially right now in this pandemic, right? Students are struggling, and I know that we've discussed this one-on-one, just as colleagues trying to support each other. But it's really been a difficult time, especially a difficult time to be a college student,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's kind of like we were chatting about before we started. I think even pre-pandemic, it wasn't easy, but I think this has just added an entirely new level of complexity. Pandemic, I know just other events and things. We're coming off of a crazy 12-month or so period. So it's just crazy right now. And that really starts to take its effect on us after a while. And I'm sure you probably even a lot more than I do see the effects of that on students.
Yeah, so I wear several hats on campus, okay? And so I get to teach a leadership, ethics, and civic engagement class for the Honors College, for example. And these are typically our overachieving students, high GPAs, obviously involved in many things on campus. I've had students almost every class this semester, and we meet twice a week, Denny, just asking for help, reaching out for support. Some of them really... they just don't know where the answer is going to come from. It's not just class that's overwhelming them, but just feeling isolated and not knowing where to turn. And then just not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring. How often does it feel like Groundhog Day? Every day is the same and has been for a year, right?
Yes, exactly. Very, very good example. Yeah.
And so just trying to hear these stories for our students, but also encouraging them that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Just yesterday we announced that students are going to be eligible to get vaccines. That's part of this, right? But a bigger part of this is how do we cope and how do students think about life after COVID. It's almost like relearning those social skills and being able to adapt. So it's just been, a really interesting and difficult time for our students, and so many of them are struggling. And I just thought having a conversation about that to help students really understand that this is a universal issue. You're not alone.
Right.
Everyone is struggling right now, and specifically, I thought it was cool if you and I talk about this, man to man, because it is Men's Mental Health Week here on campus.
Which is, by the way, not to derail things too much. I just love that we're doing that, and that's such an important topic. And because I don't know about you, I grew up a little bit, not real bad, but kind of like don't cry. I'll give you a reason to. My dad jokingly said it, but a lot of dads aren't joking when they say that.
Right.
So I think we're a lot of times just society as men taught to repress things, don't make a big issue out of it, but that's not sustainable.
Absolutely not, right? It's like, be a tough guy, don't show your feelings, but we have to start normalizing talking about those things.
Absolutely.
I work directly with student organizations, Denny, with our Greek students. There are unique obstacles with organizations like our Greeks and how their social interaction typically looks, right? And so it's been an added struggle just helping those students continue to operate at a normalish type of level while navigating this horrible pandemic. So I just think in light of it being Men's Mental Health Week, us just talking about this as guys and encouraging other students who are listening to this, regardless of your gender identity, but especially to our male students who feel that it's not cool or it's not masculine to talk about your mental health. It really is doing a lot of damage to hold those things in, right?
It is. So I think so much.
So, honestly, when we talk about coping for students as well, some of this stuff sounds like common sense and encouraging students to think about a brighter future. Some of our students, though, Denny, they've not really ever had a normal college experience, right? So just reminding students, what one of my mentors reminded me earlier this week, don't forget to breathe.
Yep.
Just breathe and count to 10. This is going to show my age a little bit, but I'm new to AirPods, okay? And so what AirPods have really helped me do is get out of my office, get out of my house, walk around. You can still continue to do business or attend class, do your meetings, and get some sunlight while you're outside. The weather's getting nice.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
And so it's a tough time. And so it's important to talk about our mental health, but it's also important to talk about we are going to get past this together, and just wanting students to understand that this is something that all of us are going through.
Definitely. Even on the walk over here, you and I were talking is again, we're showing our age here a little bit. We're not old. We're not. My dad. I had this on Facebook too. I keep mentioning my dad on this thing. He actually told me on Sunday. He's like, "You're not a spring chicken." He followed up by, "If you're going to start a family, you better do it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, Dad." But anyway, yeah. So we're not old. But we're not the youngest of young anymore either. But we've lived a little bit. We have a little perspective, and we've seen hard times, good times, a little bit come and go, but especially if you're young, 18, 19 years old, and especially your first semester at college, and kind of like you said, you don't know what normal college looks like, it can be kind of disheartening when you're a semester and a half into teams classes and not being able to do anything. And it can, I think in just so many ways, the isolation, maybe just the letdown of not having your expectations of college being met, it can start to maybe have you just question, what am I even doing here?
Absolutely. And then you think of our commuter students typically, right? And they're completely online. They've been at home, some of them, since their senior year in high school. And so they're also itching to get out, right? And so
for sure.
Part of that struggle is just wanting to have social interaction. The interesting thing, you said we've seen tough times before, but the data is actually scary, Denny. Our counseling center, and I guess it's scary but also positive that this many students are seeking therapy, but just since this time last year, we've seen 100% increase in students seeking therapy with our counseling center. So that's a great thing because mental health is becoming part of the conversation. There's more outreach. Students are accepting the help, but also it just demonstrates how much more of a need it is on campus, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I know this was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I had read this statistic. I was researching something for my department, something fairly unrelated, and it was something like one in 4 students at a college, probably, I forget the wording they use, but basically should be seeking out those resources. And so I think our department here, counseling department, does really well, because in some universities, I read it's almost a month wait to get in to see, and a lot, not to be too morbid, but a lot can happen in 28 days. I think they said 28 days. So
a lot can happen in 28 minutes.
Exactly.
When some of our students are seriously just are stopping by, students you would never expect, right? And so you've got these super macho guys, but you've also got our overachieving student athletes that'll stop by and just share just some of the deepest things that they're struggling with. And some of them, and it's no exaggeration, Denny, they're struggling even thinking about, how am I going to get through the end of this week, And so again, that's why I just think it's important for us to talk about it. Students that are listening to this conversation, maybe mental health for you, and consider yourself very fortunate. It's not a struggle right now, but check on your people. Ask them how they're doing. Sometimes it's not about just seeking professional help. It's just feeling that somebody else cares, and they're there, right? And they're going to listen to you. So I want students to know, I know that you're a resource. I'm not a mental health counselor. I have a background in mental health counseling, but I am a resource for any student that just feels like they need to talk to somebody. I'm located on the 2nd floor of the Student Center. I'm always willing to listen and always willing to provide, resources or advice if that's what students need to.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's an important part of just working at a college or university, because what you do is not the same as what I do. But I think the most important thing we have in common is we are here to serve students. Anytime someone needs a listening ear, I'm more than willing to do that as well. And again, I'm not a mental health professional. I mean, you can tell me, you can talk to me all day long. At some point, I may need to hand that off to someone who is, but I'll be a first face and a listening ear anytime. So
for sure,
so absolutely.
And this time compounded. It's not just the pandemic, right? So many of our students were affected by the recent winter storms. And so just imagine, on top of all of the stress, some of these folks, these students have lost people to the virus. They've lost family members to other causes, and then all of their classes are online, and they have no access to electric, to internet, and so then what happens? Things just continue to get worse and worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a spiral. And some people, I mean, I feel terrible because it's just like they can't catch a break.
Right.
And I just kind of breaks my heart, really.
Yeah. And so again, let's normalize talking about those situations and talking about when we don't feel okay, because honestly, it is an overwhelming majority of our students, really an overwhelming majority of people right now. So focusing on the positive, continuing to think, if I can just get through today, if I can just get through this assignment, get past this exam, but also making sure that you're talking to somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
At least one person, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important too to kind of put it in context of our larger goals, because when it's kind of I don't know if it's just career ed. I kind of think of stuff from like a career ed standpoint, but I know teaching Uni 100, which is a great experience, by the way. I'm sure you love it as much as I do.
Oh yeah.
When students come in here and they're bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and have goals, and sometimes stuff like this can really kind of weigh you down and make you question everything. So definitely, I think manageable goals are something that's very important. I think you mentioned it too. Get through an assignment, get through the day, get through the week, breaks things down into more manageable chunks, because sometimes something like finishing the semester might seem to be an insurmountable odd, but can you get through, was it March 8th through 12th? And yeah, you can, but definitely I think it's a mindset, and definitely talking to people and reaching out when you need that help as well.
Absolutely. So. And with your field in career education, you're focused on making sure students are ready for that step after college. That's the whole point they're here, right? To be successful after their time at Marshall. So just reminding students that we all had a plan. We know you had a plan. That plan was uprooted 366 days ago, right? When we were all sent home for a 2-week shutdown that's been a year.
Yes.
So I just want to remind students that it's okay that your plan has taken a detour. It's okay that you might take an extra semester or a year to graduate.
Definitely.
Because right now is the time to set short-term goals. Just because we've got vaccines rolling out and the university has a plan under President Gilbert to be back to normal-ish, right, in the fall, things can always change. And so let's continue to be positive, but also remember that it's okay if plans change.
For sure.
You know, other students have talked to me too, Denny, and these are students that their families are from close to the Huntington campus. And so some of them have lived in apartments close to campus or in Greek houses or in other housing on campus. And a lot of those students are going back home. This is a time where several families have been hit financially by the pandemic. And so how does it look too when we have students and your plans change even with your family? That adds even additional stress. So again, just setting short-term goals, semester by semester, eventually life will get back to normal, and we're going to be able to see students again set plans for the long term and actually reach those, right? Yeah, absolutely. One thing I love that you pointed out there too, it's actually a conversation I had with someone just yesterday, and in my line of work, I have this conversation a handful of times every semester. Students who maybe it is that 4-year, I'm going to take longer than 4 years to graduate, and really start to not only freak out about that, but I think on some level maybe think that they've failed or they've not measured up. And I always like to tell people, you can't always just play the comparison game. You have to go through here and at your own pace in a lot of ways. And there are, and rightfully so, sometimes time and financial concerns. But just if you take an extra semester or something, or kind of like you said, if you take the scenic route, I mean, sometimes it's a matter of just hitting the finish line. And that's what don't look at someone else who did it in 4 years and feel less or feel like that's it's not a healthy thought pattern, and it's not true either. Absolutely. So, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's important to be rational with ourselves right now. Yeah. And we need to look in the mirror and set reasonable goals. And that's why we talk about right now, it's not the time to think, am I going to graduate in 4 years? Exactly. So yeah, that's a really interesting point that you make, Denny. Also, I think it's important for students to understand that the university is still in flux, right? And so plans could change tomorrow. So expect the unexpected. When you talk about, your role in career education, and this is something you and I have talked about too, it's not as much for students what's on your resume. That's going to get you an interview. It's about what you're going to talk about and how you're going to sell your experience and your skills. And so, again, just flipping this really difficult time into a positive, looking at every challenge you've got as an opportunity. This is a potential story. These, when we talk about just getting to tomorrow, just getting past that exam, maybe it's an instructor that's really difficult for you to communicate with. Each of these incidents can be opportunities for you to really flip and turn into really employable stories when you go and talk to future employers and talk about the skills, the grit, the adaptability.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about that.
Picking those skills up and being able to actually describe how you've applied those during your time in college.
Absolutely, and it's something where I don't want it to be like too cliche or whatever, have a certain sound to it. But when we're challenged, we really do grow in those times. I was sitting here when you were saying that, thinking of one of the more inspiring people I've had in my life, and she's no longer with us, but Grandma Doherty, my grandma, born 1927, grew up in a depression. I never met a more, I think, resilient lady in my life, but then also just as happy and charming as you could ever imagine. But she, grew up in the depression, the World Wars, and a lot of that formed her into 50 some years later the lady that I knew that was changed her. But eventually, even though they were kind of rough at the time, it's, man, what a strong woman she was.
Oh yeah.
So
no, and honestly, Denny, I often tell my students, regardless of the venue that I'm talking to them in, is it's not always the most talented people that succeed. It's the people that work the hardest.
Yeah.
And you can think of any successful person that's ever lived or is currently living. You can't find one that's not overcome some sort of major obstacle or challenge in their life.
That's true.
Right?
That's very true.
And this pandemic is presenting very unique challenges. I'm just thankful I'm not a college student right now. And that's why I thought it was important to talk about this, to let students know that you're not alone. This is universal. But again, it being universal, we're going to get through it together as a campus family.
And I love that statement. That might be the best thing we've said so far. We're a family, and we're going to work together, and we will get through it. And that's one thing I do love about Marshall is we are Marshall. We work together. I think when times are tough, especially, I think when times are good, we do a pretty good job at it too. But when times are tough, we can really, and this university too. I mean, it's unfortunate events. I mean, there's a movie about one of them, and we band together and we get through things. And this is just another one of those times. It's unlike I think any other before, but kind of points back to what you'd said. Also, there's a great support system here at Marshall in a form of everything from a formal counseling center to just caring employees like Matt. I know I always see Matt interacting with students. I think you have a great rapport of students. You're just really out there.
Same to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I've not really here, but just I've been in 3 institutions in my college-wise attending classes in my academic career, and occasionally you get professionals who just don't want to get out from behind a desk and stay in their office, and that's one thing I really admire about Matt. I could never accuse him of that. He's always out on the front lines, just getting his hands dirty, so to say, and just really working with students. And there's a lot of other great professionals, I think, also at Marshall that do that, and I think students, there's just a great university family here for you, and definitely tap into that.
Denny, we have ESP, because when you said we are Marshall, not to sound like overly sentimental or sensitive, but I am in tune with my feelings. I got goosebumps when you said we are Marshall, because just like President Gilbert says, that we are, that's an inclusive we are. We are struggling too. We are in it with you. We are scared about tomorrow, but we are confident that we're going to do it together. And when you talk about the feeling of Marshall, how often do you see, a university president who's literally this accessible to students, who is, again, getting his hands dirty? What I love is that throughout this pandemic, just the leadership that he's displayed. He has not asked us as employees or our students to do anything more than he wouldn't do himself. And so, again, just when you said we are, it just reminds me of how the president describes that as an inclusive we are.
That's really good thoughts too, and I would agree with that. And I obviously won't list any names of any other universities, but I've had some conversations with people in the last week or two, and various schools have come up, and it really makes me thankful to work where I work, because I know some universities just have. I want to be careful how I say it, but I'll say just haven't handled it, I think, as well as Marshall. And to be fair, it's a very unprecedented, ever-changing situation. So let's just totally be fair. But I do think Marshall has led the pack in a lot of ways, and I'm all that much more proud to be here because of that.
Absolutely, and so much of the credit goes to our safety officials, our contact tracers, and to our students who have bought into the plan. Not everyone did, but for the large part, we couldn't have made this work without the students. And so we know that's driven this field. feeling of being overwhelmed, like being tired,
Yeah.
and just feeling, again, this sense of helplessness. And so I hope that at least our conversation has sparked some sort of feeling that it might be bad, it might feel really bad, but there is hope.
Yeah.
And there are people here that genuinely care about you as a person, that aren't as focused on what grade you got on a quiz, but more focused on how you're going to overcome that and how you're going to understand that it's okay.
Yeah,
It's going to be
definitely.
okay.
Yeah, I think very well put on that. Very well put. And yeah, kind of again, just kind of going back to you were talking about grit, and that's I don't really think I had heard that unless you're talking about sandpaper, because I have some woodworkers in my family. I don't think I'd really heard that word much till I started here. I think my former boss Denise is one of the first people I'd heard talk about that, and that grit, that tenaciousness, that holding on to what it is you want to do, and making things happen even when things are tough. I mean, it's a great skill to have. Unfortunately, I think we've been given a wonderful chance to develop those skills. I mean, I go to church. A joke in church is always don't ask God for help on patience, because He'll throw stuff at you. And I think we've been given an opportunity to practice grit over the last 12 months for a lot of us. But definitely, it's I think just a very important skill to have. And again, if that seems interesting to you, but like where do I go from there? Who do I talk to about that? You know, I know Matt, I know myself, and a number of other great professionals here would love to give you more information on that, talk to you about that, and maybe even talk to you about your hopes and dreams and goals and what are some realistic ways to make those happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And grit's one of those funny things, Denny, that it's a double-edged sword. You can't really acquire that skill without going through some sort of struggle, but that's exactly what college is all about.
Yeah.
You should experience these setbacks now, really to prepare you for overcoming those in your professional field, or also making mistakes now helps you not make them in the real world, because you're learning from them. So grit, again, is just another word for resiliency, but it speaks to me because it, again, is a skill that if you have, you're going to be able to overcome anything, right?
Oh, definitely. And this is a good place to develop those skills too. I tell students oftentimes college is a place where it's okay to fail. I mean, I don't mean just classes either, but if you maybe lead an organization and you have a misstep, I mean, it's better to do it here, because college is really a training ground for life, is the way I put it.
Yes.
And it's better to kind of have those bumpy moments here than when you get out and when your career may be on the line.
Right.
So that's why I really love a holistic view of developing a student, not just academics, and even career ed. What we do is very important. There's so many ways to develop a student, and us as educational professionals have to think about that.
Yeah, and how many times do we tell brand new students, which we haven't been able to tell brand new students in a face-to-face fashion for a year now, but telling students that when you come to Marshall, you're going to leave here hopefully a different person than when you arrived. And that doesn't mean necessarily that we've changed you. We've either reinstated the same values that your parents or whoever raised you instilled in you, but also helping you to grow and develop skills that are going to, again, help you succeed in the real world. But we tell students, Denny, they graduate with 2 pieces of paper. So it's their resume and their diploma. But that resume is going to outline those experiences again. So when we're all relating this to the bigger picture, we need to have stories to tell, right? And the best stories have like really big problems to address, right? And then it's all about how that problem was addressed. And in this case, it is the mental health challenges, overcoming academic challenges, the social challenges of this pandemic, but how did our students do that, and what's going to make them really marketable folks when they enter the career field?
Definitely. I love that. And so many good things I want to respond to that with. And one I keep thinking of is when you learn those skills, when you learn how to, hey, I can actually make it through something, when you get back to that grit and that resiliency, it's not even just for you, because there will be times down the road when you'll get to give back and you'll get to help people as well, because I'm really thankful for some of the people that I know were put in my life, I feel like, just through college, and I can't tell you how many times I thought, why am I doing this degree? This is stupid, I just want to quit. What's the point? And I had professors that talked me, metaphorically speaking, off the ledge a time or two and calmed me down, and it's been really cool to be back here working with students, because I know I've had conversations that paralleled that pretty closely a number of times, and it's my hope that those students in whatever line of work, because I'm sure I always love when we can turn students into future higher ed professionals. That's always really cool.
Oh yeah.
And I know not all of them will be, but whatever field they do go into, if they can still kind of give back to younger people and so on and so forth, and even future generations.
Oh yeah.
And things like that.
You know, my favorite part of this job, Denny, is helping students overcome challenges. What inspired me, I was a homesick baby when I came to Marshall, and obviously that was 15-ish years ago to age myself, but the support system looks a lot different than it did then, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's something I've always been passionate about. First year students, just overcoming those initial challenges, but it's not always those bright moments of when a student's elected student body president or becomes the homecoming queen or somehow achieves this huge honor through their college, but it's when students really hit rock bottom. They hit these walls that we call life. Life happens, and we see a lot of that in student affairs because we field the excused absence inquiries, right? And so just hearing some of the stories, the pandemic stories that our students have already overcome, it's inspiring. And if it wasn't for those students, I don't know that my job would feel as fulfilling and as rewarding, but those are the rewards for us, right? Intrinsically knowing that if we can at least help a student get through that tough time in their life. Students don't always remember what you say, because I can say a lot. I talk all the time, but they're always going to remember how you make them feel.
Exactly.
And so that's what I think a biggest part of our job is to make students feel valued and have worth and respected, right? And know that they can overcome whatever they're going to face. They just have to get through it and have the grit to do that.
Definitely. And I tell students too, coming to college, it's not always the easiest thing. You will be challenged. A lot will be asked of you, but we're never going to ask you to do it alone.
Right.
There's a really great support system here for you.
For sure.
So yeah, do you have anything else you want to jump in here? I think we're probably getting to a good stopping point, but is there any other thoughts you have, Matt? Because you've been just a wealth of good thoughts and good ideas today. Any parting thoughts for us?
I just want to remind students to stay positive. When you feel like you can't go outside, remember to breathe, count to 10, and don't ever forget that there are people here who genuinely love you and care for you. And I'm one of those people. Denny is one of those people. Don't ever hesitate to come find me in the Student Center. And Denny, this was an awesome opportunity. Again, you're fulfilling my podcast dream to be here. So maybe this is the next step to get me on the Today Show one day. I don't know, but I really appreciate you having me.
Oh, I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me today. And that was something Matt and I were talking about going into this, is talking about grit and goals. I mean, that's the thing. You get to Matt's age, my age, we still have goals. Matt's is to be on the Today Show, and I think he's one step closer, because if we get this out there, the right person sees it. Hey, you might be.
Hey man, Al Roker's my fashion icon. That's why I wear pocket squares. So I love the Today Show.
If you do get on there, I want you to give this podcast a shout out so we can get more people watching.
Oh,
Marshall
for sure,
Career
man.
Ahead. So.
We're gonna get you in the Apple Store. We already talked about that.
Oh, there we go. Oh, I love it. Apple Store. Oh man, that's the way to my heart. The Apple Store.
Goals.
Yes. Oh man. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today again on OverHERD Career Education, and we hope to have you back here next time.